October 1978, a horror film with a $300,000 budget hits theaters, no major stars, no studio backing, shot in 21 days. The villain, a silent man in a $2 mask stalking babysitters in suburban Illinois. Critics are skeptical, but audiences are terrified. The film grosses $70 million, becoming the most profitable independent film of all time. It creates the slasher genre as we know it, influencing Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and countless others. The killer, Michael Myers, becomes one of the most iconic monsters in cinema history. His blank, emotionless stare, his slow, methodical walk, his inability to be killed. But here's what most people don't know. Michael Myers was inspired by a real person. Director John Carpenter met him during a college visit to a psychiatric hospital in Kentucky. A young boy with what Carpenter described as a schizophrenic stare, blank, emotionless, purely evil. That image haunted Carpenter for years until he created Halloween. The Mask, a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask painted white and bought for less than $2. The music, Carpenter composed it himself in 3 days. The result, a film that changed horror forever and made us afraid to babysit. This is the story of Halloween, how it was made, what inspired it, and why it's still terrifying 46 years later. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Halloween is one of the most important horror films ever made, and with Halloween season here, it's the perfect time to break down the true story behind Michael Myers, how the film was created on a shoestring budget, and why it became a cultural phenomenon. Let's dive in. In 1977, independent producer Irwin Yablans had an idea: make a horror film about babysitters being murdered. That was it. No complex plot, no deep mythology, just the babysitter murders, which was the film's working title. Yablans needed a director and approached John Carpenter, who had just made Assault on Precinct 13, a low-budget thriller that showed promise. Carpenter and producer Deborah Hill took the concept and refined it. They decided the murder should happen on a specific night to create urgency and atmosphere. Carpenter suggested Halloween night. Perfect. A holiday associated with masks, darkness, and childhood fears. They wrote the screenplay together in about 3 weeks. Hill, who had worked as a babysitter as a teenager, wrote the dialogue for the female characters, making it authentic. Carpenter wrote Dr. Loomis's speeches about evil and the mechanics of terror. The inspiration for Michael Myers came from multiple sources. First, Carpenter drew on haunted house folklore that exists in small American towns. As he explained, most towns have a story about a house where somebody was killed or went crazy, something teenagers whisper about. The Myers house represented that universal fear. Second, Carpenter took inspiration from the gunslinger in Westworld, a relentless robot killer that can't be stopped. He wanted Michael to have that same unstoppable quality, but in human form. But the most chilling inspiration came from Carpenter's college years at Western Kentucky University. During a psychology class, he visited a psychiatric institution in Kentucky. There, he encountered a young patient, maybe 12 or 13 years old, who had what Carpenter described as the creepiest thing he'd ever seen. The boy had a blank, pale, emotionless face with black eyes. He just sat there, catatonic, not responding to anything. Carpenter said it was like looking at pure evil in human form. That image haunted him and became the psychological foundation for Michael Myers. Carpenter gave actor Donald Pleasance lines in the film that describe exactly what he saw that day. Dr. Loomis says, "I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil." That's Carpenter describing the real patient he met. Character names in Halloween were drawn from Carpenter and Hill's real lives. Haddonfield, Illinois was named after Hill's hometown of Haddonfield, New Jersey. Several street names came from Carpenter's hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky. Laurie Strode was allegedly the name of one of Carpenter's old girlfriends. And Michael Myers, that was the name of an English producer who had entered Assault on Precinct 13 in European film festivals. Carpenter said, "He was one of the nicest men in show business. I took away his character and made him an evil force." Financing the film was a nightmare. Producer Mustafa Akkad was initially uninterested. He was shooting a lavish historical epic in Morocco, where a single day's filming cost $300,000, which was Carpenter's entire proposed budget. Eventually, ACAD agreed to fund the film after Carpenter described it to him in a suspenseful way, almost frame by frame. The budget was locked at $300,000. That tiny budget forced creativity. Of the $300,000, $70,000 went to renting Panavision camera equipment, including the revolutionary Panaglide Steadicam. Halloween was only the second film ever to use this technology. Carpenter believed that filming with professional equipment would trick audiences into thinking it was a high-budget production. He was right. The remaining money had to cover everything else: cast, crew, locations, props, costumes, special effects. The most iconic element of Halloween, Michael Myers' mask, came from pure necessity. Production designer Tommy Lee Wallace was tasked with finding a mask quickly and cheaply. The script just said, Michael wears a Halloween mask made of rubber with the grotesque features of a man. Wallace went to a costume shop and found a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask from Star Trek. It cost $1.98. He painted it white, widened the eye holes, and removed the eyebrows. That's it. The most recognizable horror mask in cinema history was a Captain Kirk mask that cost less than $2. The film was shot in just 21 days, in May 1978, in South Pasadena, California. The problem, set on Halloween night in Illinois, but they were filming in spring in Southern California. The crew had to create autumn by spray painting leaves and scattering them on lawns. Most of the crew were students or amateur filmmakers working for free or minimal pay, doing 12 to 14-hour days just for the experience. Even Jamie Lee Curtis, then relatively unknown, helped move camera boxes between scenes. Carpenter composed the iconic Halloween theme himself in just 3 days on a synthesizer. He used a simple 5/4 time signature inspired by his father, who was a music teacher. The theme is only a few notes, but it's instantly recognizable and creates immediate tension. That music became as iconic as the mask. Once you hear it, you never forget it. Jamie Lee Curtis was cast as Laurie Strode for multiple reasons. First, her mother was Janet Leigh, who starred in Psycho. Carpenter loved that connection to horror history. Second, Curtis had never done a film before, so she was affordable. Third, she perfectly embodied the final girl archetype: smart, responsible, virginal, the one who survives because she's good. Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis brought gravitas to the film. His performance elevated the material, making the audience believe Michael Myers was genuinely evil. Halloween was released in October 1978 and became a phenomenon. Made for $300,000, it grossed $70 million worldwide, holding the record for highest-grossing independent film for years. Adjusted for inflation, it's one of the most profitable films ever made. Critics initially dismissed it as exploitation trash, but audiences loved it. The film created the slasher genre template, teenagers being stalked and killed, one by a masked killer. Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, none of them exist without Halloween. The film was so influential that in 2006, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Halloween spawned 13 films in the franchise, multiple timelines, reboots, and remakes. Michael Myers became a cultural icon. The mask, the theme music, the slow walk, all instantly recognizable. What makes Halloween so effective is its simplicity. Michael Myers has no backstory explaining why he's evil, no childhood trauma, no supernatural origin. He's just evil, pure and simple. As Dr. Loomis says, he's not a man. He's evil itself. That lack of explanation makes him more terrifying. We can't understand him. We can't reason with him. We can't stop him. He just exists to kill. Carpenter wanted Michael to be almost like a force of nature. He gave Michael supernatural resilience. Shot 6 times. He gets up and walks away. He's stabbed, beaten, and still keeps coming. He's the boogeyman made real. The ending of the film, where Michael disappears after being shot, was designed to terrify the imagination. Carpenter shows various suburban houses as Michael's breathing is heard on the soundtrack. He's gone, but he's everywhere. He could be anywhere. That's nightmare fuel. The film also works because of its setting, suburban Middle America. Before Halloween, horror usually happened in castles, haunted houses, or remote locations. Carpenter brought it to normal neighborhoods, the street where you live, the house next door. That's what made it so personal and terrifying. The monster isn't in some faraway place. He's in your town, on your street, watching you through your window. Halloween changed horror forever. It proved you didn't need a big budget or major stars to make an effective scary movie. You just needed a good concept, talented filmmakers, and an understanding of what frightens people. Every slasher film that followed owes a debt to Halloween. The final girl trope, the masked killer, the holiday setting, the twist ending, the unstoppable villain, all from Halloween. So is Halloween based on a true story? No, there was no real Michael Myers who murdered his sister and escaped from a mental hospital. But the character was inspired by real things. A real patient carpenter met whose blank stare embodied pure evil. Real suburban folklore about haunted houses. Real Celtic traditions about Halloween night, when the veil between worlds is thin and dark, souls walk among the living. These real elements, combined with Carpenter's filmmaking genius, created something that feels true, even though it's fiction. The Halloween house still exists in South Pasadena, though it was moved from 707 Meridian Avenue to 1000 Mission Street in 1987. It's now office spaces and doesn't allow visitors, but fans still make pilgrimages. The hedge on Montrose Avenue, where Michael first reveals himself, is also a popular photo spot. These locations have become horror landmarks. 46 years after its release, Halloween remains terrifying. New generations discover it every October. The film spawned sequels that range from great to terrible, but the original stands alone as a masterpiece of horror filmmaking. John Carpenter created something timeless, a monster that represents pure, unexplainable evil. Michael Myers doesn't need motivation. He doesn't need a backstory. He just needs to exist, and that's what makes him eternal. So what do you think? Is Halloween the greatest slasher film ever made? And would Michael Myers be as scary if we knew why he kills? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the making of a horror classic, hit that like button, subscribe for more horror content, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and remember, he's not dead. He's just waiting for the next Halloween. I'll see you in the next one.